Stop creating content for the sake of creating content. I mean, actually give some thought to why you're creating this content, not just so you can be found in Google. It has to be content that actually is useful to me.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are making things happen. My name is Michael T. Johnson, and I'm here with my co-host Tyler Kelly. Today we are at EQ Leadership Lab, and we're in the EQ Leadership Lounge right now. And this is the day before the MDMC conference. So we're very excited to be here, and we're also very excited to have Mike Grehan with us. So Mike, thank you for being here today.
I'm very pleased. I'm not quite sure which one of those I am, the innovator, creator, or disruptor. Maybe it's a little bit of each, I don't know.
Maybe a little bit of all three.
Yeah.
So Mike is an SEO pioneer, author, world traveler, and keynote speaker, a champagne connoisseur,
I
and
surely
a consummate drinking partner to the global digital marketing community. Now that's a great thing to be there. But you're the former publisher of SearchEngineWatch.com and ClickZ.com.
Yep.
And a producer of the industry's largest search and social marketing event, which is the SES Conference and Expo.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a proud chairman of SEMPO, which is Search Engine Marketing, and what's the P?
It's the Global Trade Association for
okay.
search marketers.
And you're a proud CMO of
Acronym.
It was covered up there on the phone there. Marketing Director and CMO of Acronym.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show. We're pleased to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And we're looking forward to talking with you. I spoke today on a subject that was not related to digital, but my background is in digital. I built my first website in '99, which means I came up in the SEO era. Which
There you go.
You're a legend.
Had I known you then, I would have optimized it for you.
Well, of course, I learned to do it myself, right? So you're one of the legends of SEO.
I guess, kind of, sort of. I'm sure that somebody told me once, to be a legend, you have to be dead. So but I'll try and avoid that. I came in the industry very, very early on. I actually came online in 1995, and I started then what I called an internet marketing consultancy. And I tell people that now, and they go, wow, that was very innovative, that you were like the first. I was like, no, that was really stupid because nobody needed an internet marketing company back in those days. So I think we kind of started off like, most people back in the day was just building websites, actually probably setting up email for existing clients that we had, because my background, although I did work in radio and television for a while, but it's actually advertising agency background. And one of the things that I did very early on was trying to explain to people why they didn't need a fax machine anymore. There's this thing called email, and I would actually, we would work with clients, and then when we finished setting them up with their email, I would give them a gift, which was a potted plant, and I would put it on the fax machine and say, you don't need that anymore. That's, But it was probably around about 1998, I think, when I was working with one particular client. We built the website, and he came to me and he said, Mike, I went to this thing called a search engine. It's called Alta Vista, which was the big search engine before Google came around. He said, and I did a search for our products and services, and I could see all of the competitors, but I couldn't see ours. Why is that? And I said, well, because Alta Vista is a crappy search engine, I'm sure. And that's really what got me started on looking at how search works. What is this? How do you rank higher than the next guy? And strangely enough, it was a guy from Alta Vista, probably around about that same period, had seen a kind of an e-book, I guess you would call it now, that I'd written about search and how search engines work. And he sent me a note saying, I read it, and it's okay, but what you really need to do is take a look at this book, which is called Modern Information Retrieval, and it was written by a scientist called Gerard Salton. Man, this is the hardest book I've ever had to read in my life, because this scientist, this guy, had worked on information retrieval, particularly in digital, and there were so many concepts that were in there, but by the time I did get through it, I was like, wow, this is mind-blowing. And it was perfect because Google came around at around about the same time. And I was looking at some of the stuff that I'd learned in this book, and then I would just try with particular websites to see how I could, change title tags and those kind of things. But the most important thing was looking at links, how people link back to websites. That was the strongest signal. And it was cool. I remember going back to a client once with the Alta Vista thing, and I said to him, "You have the top 30 at Alta Vista." He was like, "I'm in the top 30. I said, "No, you are the top 30 at Alta Vista." So I think, many of the search engines, even Google back in the day at that time, kind of had wanted posters hanging for me in the lobby because they were saying that I was spamming their search engine, and I was like, dude, I was just doing a great job for my client, So that's how I got involved in the search game.
So you mentioned a couple of things that if any of us were involved in search kind of early on, links were really important, things like that. What has changed and what are the things that people need to look at now if they want to be found online?
So there are kind of the three phases that have gone on in search and information retrieval on the web. The first thing was text. It was the most important thing, and that's what Gerard Salton had written about in this book. So actually having the keywords, on the page that described exactly what the subject matter was. And that's the way that most documents were ranked. But part of the problem that we had with that is that, and I've used this before, if a music student writes a paper about Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and then you take a major international conductor of an orchestra, and he writes one, which would you think is the most authoritative? Well, obviously you'd think it was the conductor. But if you're just looking at the keywords, well, he could be at 100 and she could be at number 1 kind of thing. So one of the reasons that links became important was more about, instead of you trying to say how authoritative you are, let's see who else thinks that, and that's the notion of giving you a link. So people tend not to link to, this is the crappiest website I've ever seen. It's usually linking to good content. So the links became the most important thing. But then around about 2005, I guess, Google suddenly realizes, that this is not very democratic. This was supposed to be the whole thing, that the web is democratic and you have a website. If you guys link to me, then all of a sudden I look great. Yeah. What about the 50 gazillion people who are end users who don't have a website? How do they get to vote for the content? So that's when looping in end user data and the way that content is being consumed, that became really important. I would say right now the strongest signal, keywords are important, links are important, but looking at end user data is now more about understanding context, and it's this. The strongest signal is actually GPS. Okay, so it's not a case of creating content that has certain keywords in it. Okay, when I do a search now and I have this, it's all about me. Who I am, where I am, what time of day it is. That's how the results change, So I think, the session that I was doing today, again, is all about creating a content experience that actually assists people, that helps move them down the line when you look at the customer journey, So instead of thinking about how do I create content that I might be able to fool Google with, which people did years and years ago, it's now how do I create a really good content experience for the end user.
Has the search industry transcended into a content industry, or is there still just a core group of search guys and gals out there?
At the end of the day, if you didn't have content, there would be nothing to search anyway, so the content has to be in there. I think it's kind of evolving. If you look at the industry now, there are two kind of different channels, if you want, that do actually come together in the middle. So search is one and discovery is another. And people use those terms interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. So for instance, in search, I am actively looking for content that will assist me. I don't know what I want. If I did, I wouldn't need a search engine. So that's the reason that I'm doing it. So I'm a human being actively in search of content, yeah? Whereas with discovery, it's usually the other way around, and people refer to that as content marketing. I don't know if that's the best description for it, but that is content that is actually trying to find a human being. It's the other way around, you know? So it's surely content, and not content for the sake of it, but content that is relevant and useful in the moment. That's the important thing.
So for somebody who's creating that kind of content, what's the difference between the type of content that I'm going to create that's discoverable, someone discovering me, and the stuff that somebody's searching for something specific? Is there a different way I should approach that if I'm creating that content?
So if you understand intent, and you can get that from the type of query and understanding behavior. I was explaining that this scientist, Andre Broder, who is now a distinguished engineer at Google, wrote this paper many, many years ago. It's called Taxonomy of Search, scientific paper. But the gist of it is that he was able to take a look at all of these queries, millions and millions and millions, and then put them into 3 buckets. He put them informational, navigational, and transactional. And that's a cognitive process that you go through when you're trying to satisfy an informational need, you know? And if you understand that, you'll create a different content experience at each stage that we're going through. And it's as simple as this, you know, if I just start and do my journey to satisfy the information need, in that first query, don't try and sell me anything. This is the worst time to be trying to sell me something. Just give me some information that I need that will help to move me down the line, you know? And then ask the question, what is content? What does that actually mean? You know, I used to work with content creators back in the day when the industry was just getting off the ground, and ask that question. They would always say, oh, it's great copy, it's really good headlines and that kind of thing. It could actually be a mortgage calculator. It doesn't have to, it's just like what will help me at the moment. It could be an app, it can be anything. So even if you think about engagement, as I said before, you know, if I'm the Weather Channel and somebody says, what's the weather in St. Louis, 70 degrees, 0.8 of a second, guess what? That was a great content experience. I didn't need to be there for 1 hour. You know? So thinking about that, thinking about this whole idea of the experience, is a web page the best answer? It could be maybe an image. Maybe it's a 30-second video. Maybe it's a 75-page PDF document. But if you understand intent, then you will create the right content to go with it.
So obviously we're here at EQ Leadership Lab. Tell us about kind of what you brought today. And I know you were one of the speakers today. So what did you speak about today?
Pretty much what we're talking about now, but it was kind of condensed. And I had some pretty cool video to show. There's a guy called Behshad Basadi, who is a well-known scientist in the information retrieval circles. And for Google, he's based in Switzerland, and he heads up what they refer to as conversational search, which is basically speech-based or voice-activated queries, you know. And in the video, what I was showing is that he went on a journey that started with a text message that he received. And basically the text message, he's in Switzerland, Google's based in Mountain View in California, and his colleague had sent a message in text saying, this is the restaurant that we're going to eat in when you come to Mountain View next. And he just had this text message open in the app and said, show me the menu. Didn't even say the name of the restaurant, he just said, show me the menu. Okay, Google Assistant analyzed the text, knew exactly which restaurant it was, and brought up the menu. And then he said, show me pictures of inside. And then Google Assistant opened up the Maps app and then showed him pictures inside of the restaurant. And then he said, I'd like to book a table. And then the Google Assistant opens the Open Table app, well actually deep linked to the Open Table app. And then all he had to do after that was just press a couple of buttons and the table was booked, you know. So the whole idea of my presentation was about stop selling, start helping. What is it that you could do for me right at the very beginning of this? Because if you're just trying to sell me stuff, then in short, you're not actually helping me at all, you know. So I think it's really cool that these digital assistants, whether it's Google Assistant, whether it's Siri, whether it's Cortana, One of the things that I pointed out is that every time you pick up this device, your iPhone or your Android, whatever it is, and start talking, people think that you're talking to Google and searching for something. Actually, 60% of the time, you're looking for service. You're asking Siri to do something for you. So, for instance, I mentioned openly the two things that I hate most in life. First is my own company, and second is my own cooking. So staying in when my wife's not around is not a great idea for me. But when I pick up my phone and I ask Siri, or just talk to the phone and ask Siri to book me a table, I don't want Siri to go to Google and search for one. I want Siri to open OpenTable, book it for me, and get the points that I get for being a member. You know, so I think that's more or less helping people to understand that whole notion of the sooner that you can connect, as I've already said, with the content experience, whether it's voice, whether somebody's typing it in, and the other way around, if it's just discovery, making sure that if I go to Amazon, collaborative filtering has been there for a long time. You know, I'm buying a pair of shoes. Well, Amazon knows people who bought shoes also buy socks. Do you want to buy some socks? You know, that kind of thing.
So, you know, you're really talking about AI and automation as it relates to search and voice search. And does there come a point when the machines have got it all figured out and we no longer need to optimize our content for search?
So that's an interesting question, because when it comes to paid search, you know, Google Ads, it's much easier for a machine to optimize paid search, for the simple reason that you're optimizing around $1. You know, you're optimizing around a tangible thing, around $1. And it actually becomes more of a commodity as well. So working with ads, it's just like the stock exchange or anything else, you know. It's much easier to do that. On the organic side, the search engine optimization side that we talk about, that's much more difficult for a machine to do at this time, because that's a very subjective thing. You know, when I ask for a piece of information, the page that you wrote, or the image that you took, or the video that you shot, I may think yours is better than his, but you might think his is better than yours. You know, those kind of things. So when it's of a subjective nature like that, it's very hard for the machine to do that. At some point, they'll get there. Most of the time, the things that are being served up to you that you go, oh, that's exactly what I was looking for, is because the machine understands the behavior. And just understand the behavior, you know, predictable analytics are able to say, well, I knew you were going to ask for that anyway, and kind of show you. But we are kind of a long way from this whole thing that people have the idea of the machine doing everything. There's this notion of strong AI and weak AI. And weak AI is actually really, really cool. People don't realize what that actually means. So, for instance, the example that I used today, if you get into an autonomous vehicle and ask it to drive you home, it will drive you home. If you ask Siri, order me a pizza, she'll order you a pizza. But if you ask the autonomous vehicle to order you a pizza, and if you ask Siri to drive you home, that ain't gonna happen, you know. So it's what it's trained to do at the moment, you know, trained to do certain tasks. But we're a long way from having, you know, artificial intelligence that really is thinking ahead and understanding meaning.
So if you had to give advice to anybody that's doing anything online, a company, a brand, a startup, whatever, what's one thing you see that people miss that you think should be just like basic, everybody should be doing this?
I guess probably the most obvious thing is stop creating content for the sake of creating content. I mean, actually give some thought to why you're creating this content, not just so you could be found in Google. It has to be content that actually is useful to me. So ask the question, what is content? And like I said before, start going through this. Maybe a 30-second video is a better response than a web page. Maybe it's just one image, that kind of thing. And then the other thing is stop thinking about websites and start thinking about web apps. If you look at the way that JavaScript, very, very heavy JavaScript is used on websites now, it's not there just for fun. It's actually there to anticipate what it is that I want to do next. So, you know, if you go to the FedEx website just to say, where's my stuff? That's not a website, that's a web app, okay? All of that technology that's in there, and it's there to provide a service to you, which is what I said, stop selling, start helping. So I think that certainly the what we call a website is going to become much more functional as an app as opposed to a website. And then the other thing is, and I mentioned this and it was in that part of the video, actually if you have the app, make sure that Google has it indexed and then have a deep link, as the example that I gave before, that scientist did not have the app on his phone at the time, it wasn't native on the, but Google did go and deep link into the app on the web and open it up for him.
Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I know you've got to run. Real quick, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you online?
Just Google me. There you go.
There you go. That's the best answer.
just Google Mike Grehan and you'll find me there.
There you go. Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Enjoyed it, guys. Thanks.
For more episodes, visit innovationcity.co. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're in St. Louis, visit us on a Thursday night. You can find details at vincafstl.org. You can also connect with us on social at We Are Slam or at Venture Cafe STL.
This is where it all begins.